Hello, everyone. So glad to be live with you. Right now, I am joined by my friend Stu Peters because we have very sad news about a controversial doctor who helped the health of many people during the pandemic. Dr. Zelenko has died. Stu Peters, thank you so much for joining me.
Yeah, of course. It's a sad day for humanity, Ivory. Zelenko was responsible for saving thousands of lives, and we all remember thousands, tens of thousands of people, geriatrics, helpless grandmas and grandpas being sent to their imminent death, by the tyrant Andrew Cuomo. Uh, as he was sending these people to nursing homes, knowing exactly what their fate was going to be, all for optics, all for a narrative that Zelenko was, in the meantime, researching how can we actually help these people. And it's a sad thing. It's funny because earlier today we actually received news that Zev had kind of a second wind, I guess, if you will, or some sort of a miraculous burst of energy where the doctors were actually floored by his progress. And they reduced the likelihood of his death today to 50-50. And they said that they felt like that it was something that he could actually fight. And if anybody could, he certainly could. But I think that what we were seeing was the culmination of Jesus Christ inside of him. And I don't know. I feel like a huge loss on my heart. I feel a huge loss for our country and for the world in the loss of Dr. Zelenko. It's a tragic and horrific thing.
Yeah, so here I have an article from the New York Times that for people don't remember Dr. Zelenko, he was widely covered at the very start of the pandemic. Upstate New York doctor touting a malaria drug that we can't name here on YouTube, the H word, in combination with zinc and an antibiotic, and saying, look, this is saving a lot of my patients. The exact same combination of treatments that Dr. Emmanuel, the African immigrant doctor who works here in Houston, what she touted too at the steps of the Supreme Court and then got widely censored for it. So Dr. Zelenko, Dr. Emmanuel, they were using these treatments successfully. And so, of course, he became very scrutinized. You see here threats from federal prosecutors. This was at the beginning of the pandemic. A headline like that is going to scare a lot of doctors and make them say, hey, maybe I shouldn't follow Dr. Zelenko's path, even though this is a cheap, easily accessible, and usable drug to treat patients during this time.
I mean, as you know, speaking out makes you a target. And I don't think anybody's a better example of that than you. And myself also. And here we are on the platform that actually targets people for speaking out. So it's unfortunate that we have to censor ourselves and not even say the name of something that could actually help people as they're facing death. But that's the environment that we live in. But I think that Zelenko set a standard when he said, I would rather die standing up than be on my knees. And that to me was a moment of reckoning when he said that on my program. And we became very close friends. I'll just tell you a personal story if I can.
Sure.
There was a one of the first events, because I don't go and do public speaking events. It's something that I just, at the very beginning, I just didn't feel like I was called to do that. I'm not a celebrity guy. I'm just a dude, right? And so I've been invited to a lot of places. And originally I was just, no, I'm not going to go there. But I really wanted to get to Florida for an event called the Let's Go Brandon Rally in Brandon, Florida, just outside of Tampa. And when Dr. Zelenko learned that I wanted to go to this thing, which he was not going to, he said, I don't think it's a good idea for you to be flying, on major air carriers for the reasons that we know. And so I said, well, yeah, I mean, I don't really have a choice. That's what I have to do. And he goes, no, you don't. I'm going to send a jet for you. And he had just been able to recently acquire this private jet. And wow. I thought back to the times of when, President Trump was running for office, and he got on stage and he said something to the effect of, I can be anywhere. I have a private jet. And so everybody wanted to demonize Trump because they were saying, well, look at him. He's bragging about how he's a billionaire and he has a jet. But that's not really at all what Trump was saying. What he was saying was, I can beat them because I can be in this city and that city all in one day, and then be home for dinner with my family, which gives me the upper advantage while everybody else is making flights literally travel all day. So while they're traveling, productive. And so Zelenko felt the same way. While everybody else is doing this, this, and this, I can be productive. I can be spreading my message. I can be delivering treatments that work for people worldwide in multiple different places. And he goes, and plus I have the security of knowing who's flying me and what they've been injected with or not. And so he goes, as long as I'm alive, you will fly private and you'll have, full access to my jet. And I just thought that was something that was really, really sincerely generous and selfless for him to do that, because I know what the cost of fuel is under the current regime. And I know the reasons why as well. But Jet A fuel is not the exception. I mean, it's really expensive. So for him to do that, I thought was an amazing gesture. And that was only shortly after we had really kind of become friends. We had known each other. We were acquaintances, obviously, professionally through the platform. But for it to become a friendly thing just shortly thereafter, for him to be offering up, tens of thousands of dollars, presumably in travel, was quite the selfless act. And as I got to know him after that, this wasn't something that was an anomaly for Dr. Zelenko. This was just who he was. He is a selfless humanitarian and a genius who genuinely cares about this country and genuinely cares about human life and how people receive treatment. And I thought that was what made him a standout amongst all of the other zombies that currently work in the medical industrial complex.
Wow. So he was there to help protect your life when you need it.
Yeah.
Now, let's talk about, I know a lot of viewers are wondering, how did Dr. Zelenko actually die? What do you know about that? I hear it's cancer.
Well, that is what we understand the diagnosis to be. And so, look, I don't want to make conspiracies out of things. That's what it is. That's what we've been told. That's what his family is saying. That's what, Chris, who is a close friend of mine also, who is right hand to Dr. Zelenko. I will say that I find it odd that so many people, particularly influential people and people who are outspoken, are now all of a sudden coming down with these underlying, things that happen. But right now, I think that it's time that we just focus on what Dr. Zelenko's legacy is, which is he has left an unbelievable and undeniable footprint on this country as an example of how people should treat each other and how people should stand up for what they know to be right. And Zelenko did that every day. I remember, and I don't have the text pulled up because I'm talking to you via my phone from this remote location. But I'll paraphrase, one of the last texts that I sent to him was something along the lines of, I really appreciate you being in my foxhole. And, he said something to the effect of, no, we're not in the same foxhole together because we don't sit in foxholes. We sharpen our bayonets, we put them on the end of our rifle, and we run right at the enemy. No time for sitting in a foxhole, Mr. Peters. And that really just hit me like, this is a man that I can learn a lot from in that regard. And I've always been a fighter, but that just took it to the next level for me. And that's it, that taught me a lot. So he was a true role model. And I just pray that his legacy just lives on and that, people understand what it really means to be a fighter. There's a lot of people on the internet, Telegram, Gab, other places that like to talk the game, but walking the walk is a completely different thing. And, I know that I'm talking to somebody right now who did that. I mean, you were live on television and boom, you went on Veritas and boom, you know what it means to walk the walk. I like to think that we do it on my show, and Zeb was one of those guys that's of that caliber that we can learn a lot from, even as trailblazing pioneers in the information superhighway, if you will, of actually just being out here and willing to say whatever it takes, even risking our platforms to do it. And I think that he should be remembered for that fearlessness that he had.
Yeah, he talked on your show. I know you had him on your show a few times. In one episode of your show I was watching, he talked about death threats that he had
Yeah.
received. I guess one death threat the guy claimed to be from Pfizer, was it? But
Yeah.
doctors
So I don't know how. I don't know how many like direct threats he got. I mean, they're countless for me, so I'm sure that he gets a lot of them too, or did. And I think that he, like me, kind of just, okay, whatever, bring it. If you want to bring it, you'll get the smoke, and it's probably not the smoke that you're looking for. But I think that what he was actually articulating was that there's, according to him and according to what he said, there is a hit list. And this hit list is put together by big pharma companies, who we know have endless resources monetarily, economically, and they can outmatch anybody really in this government, in the world, in any world government for that matter. And that they will implicitly say this person needs to be eliminated. And he, along with several others who've appeared on my program, and who have been outspoken, advocates for medical freedom, apparently appeared on this list, and he was number 2, only second to Dr. Brian Ardis. So I don't know if these lists are, disseminated and contracted out, and who they specifically go to, but those are the things that he said, and I don't have any reason to discount the credibility of Dr. Zelenko, so I believe that to be true.
And on that same show with you, he said that even these scary death threats are not phasing him because he has a dead man switch set in place. So if he were to die, certain things he was working on would be released. So
That makes me smile, because I believe him, and I have reason to believe that. So I don't want to get too much into that, but yes, Dr. Zelenko does have those bases covered.
So hopefully we will get to see some of that information he was working on very soon. I was seeing the last thing he posted on his Facebook is his memoir he was working on later this summer. His memoir is going to be released. His co-author hopefully will still be able to complete that. And then the other thing he wrote on his Facebook, just the last thing before he came down quite ill, I guess this month, he said, "I'm trying to break the herd mentality that most sheeple follow and hurt the globalists where they feel it most. My messaging about the flu is simple. Flu kills many more kids than the new pandemic illness. It is a single strand RNA illness that uses RNA-dependent RNA polymerase, if I'm saying that right, to make copies of its genetic material and spread. Zinc blocks RNA-dependent RNA polymerase. If a zinc lunophore is used together with zinc enough, zinc enters the cell and stops the flu from replicating. The flu shot works very poorly, as admitted by FDA CDC. Also, after the new illness, does anyone still trust the government? Our government is responsible for all the medical tyranny. Therefore, would it be reasonable to question whether the flu shot is a good idea for kids? My kids will be given Z-Stat gummies." And then he has the link there. So he's been working on these treatments to actually boost your immunity so you never end up in the hospital. Very, very early. He was using the earliest type of treatment. And actually, it's interesting. I was supposed to have him on my show. We were trying to book him, and I don't know if his people actually reached out to me, and I was like, "Yes, I'd love to have you on my show." But I don't know if he came down ill or what. It never happened. But they actually They wanted me to promote his treatment protocol, which I said I'd be happy to talk about it for free, but I'm not going to take payment because that's conflict of interest. But this is the exact same treatment protocol. What he was using is what I was banned from Fox for talking about. So pretty much the treatments that Dr. Zelenko helped save lives with are the reason that I no longer work in the corporate news.
You get it. Yeah.
Let me tell you how I get it, because you look at headlines, the media is smearing these sort of treatments left and right. But I was the boots on the ground journalist. I was sent by Fox to a hospital where Fox thought they were, that hospital was sticking with the mainstream narrative. But no, the hospital was actually using stuff that Dr. Zelenko uses. And so I allow that to go on into the mainstream media, and all hell breaks loose in my newsroom. They come after me with HR. But when I looked further at what that hospital is doing, the hospital had a quarter of the death rate of other hospitals across the nation and the world. So something was working at that hospital. And when you realize that, that's what just, was horrifying to me, because it appears there's blood on the hands of the media, and the fact that people like Dr. Zelenko would be controversial now and scrutinized.
Absolutely. Blood on the hands of the media, absolutely, all day, whether it comes to the way the pandemic was handled or the way that we're responding to, this Ukrainian war. So many things. The list, as you know, is endless. You worked in this media for the longest time, so you're very familiar with who handles the narratives, how they're passed down, and what you're assigned to, and the way that. So, I'm preaching to the choir here, but I think that for the people that we're broadcasting to, I think the most important thing for them to understand is that when you have a leader like somebody like Zelenko, for example, who's a great example, and there probably won't be many more examples like him, because this is a man who set the bar of difference between what it means to be a part of a comfortable establishment. So what I mean by that is a comfortable group of doctors. And if you go to any facility, whether it's Vanderbilt, whether it's Mayo Clinic, whether it's a children's hospital or some Allina network or whatever it is, if you go to any of these major corporately funded, special interest funded medical establishments, what you will find is going to be consistent across the board is that they all use a system called EPIC. EPIC is basically a system where AI information dictates what a doctor is to prescribe to you, Ivory, if you end up in my care based on this symptom and that symptom, and this and that, and this and that. And you put all those things in, and then a directive comes to me from either the NIH or the CDC or, the HHS or whoever else. And I am dictated as a doctor what it is, how that I'm specifically supposed to treat you, and with what drugs and at what frequency and at what potency and all of that. So really, we send doctors to medical school for decades to learn how to follow instructions that literally my son could follow in like putting together Legos. And if you deviate outside of those instructions, what we're telling you as the government is that we're going to strip you of your license. So you've gone out of school for decades. You've spent hundreds of thousands of dollars at minimum on your education. The taxpayers have funded a lot of this through grants and everything else to make you a doctor, to make you an expert so that you can, profile me as a patient and hopefully put my care as your best interest and as your top priority, but instead it's not. And so now what we really have, and I'm going to say this in no uncertain terms, we have a constitutional crisis, because we have those that are responsible for the medical care and the longevity of life and the prosperity and of Americans and our kids at stake, because the professionals who are charged with our lives, like literally our heartbeat, our brains, our neurological care, everything, are dependent on a certain narrative in order for them to keep the license to continue practicing what they got involved with based on a passion that they had to help humanity. And so the people who are dictating to them what it means to help humanity, it seems, are actually there to hurt or harm or kill humanity. And they are the ones dictating to them and then using as leverage the license that they spent years and hundreds of thousands of dollars to earn. So you put them in a situation where now they have to make the choice of which is more important to them, their own family that they provide for, or the life of a human being who has a family that they provide for. So we are in a constitutional and humanitarian crisis, and Dr. Zelenko stood firm. He held that line, and he said, my family will be okay. I feel that I've adequately earned financially to be able to provide for them if I pass. And also, I have taught them a value system to where they will be able to adequately provide for self when I do pass, based on the set of values that they have, the integrity that they have, that they will always be hireable, and under God, they will always be prosperous because they are on the right side of history based on my teachings. And I think that's the lesson that a lot of people can take from what Dr. Zelenko left here as his legacy throughout his life and ultimately his tragic death, although be it unpredictable, although be it mysterious, and although be it maybe to be questioned later at a more appropriate time. I think that's what we need to focus on, is what Dr. Zelenko taught all of us, because we can now really go into our doctors and look at them and say, and ask them the question, how are you really effectively treating me? Right? Because your individual healthcare, the individual healthcare of your family, that matters to us. That's what keeps us here physically. So for us to pretend like it doesn't matter, or who controls these people and what leverage or blackmail or bribery or any of the above is being held against them to force them to practice medicine in a certain communistic type way, that's unacceptable. This is America. This is the United States of America. And we should have real doctors treating real patients with real illness or symptoms, rather than having some medical cabal running roughshod on.
Oh, you're breaking up. Are you still there? Stu just froze. Oh, I can hear you.
That's
Oh, you're breaking up again. You're breaking up, but I was going to bring up this comment. Dr. Joseph Verone, that's right. He is the doctor in Houston who was using similar treatments to what Dr. Zelenko was using and to what Dr. Emmanuel was using. And we weren't supposed to talk about that anymore. But there I was, sent to his hospital, and he told me what he does, and I reported it, and boom. Anyway, so Dr. Verone is great. But what you mentioned about that centralized control of what doctors are allowed to even treat patients with, I think a lot of people's eyes were opened during the pandemic to how much that level of control is there, even to the point of the media. What I found out is that, once certain institutions like the NIH say something about a certain drug, then we are going to only speak in terms that the NIH approves on our media. That's what happened in my situation, and it was then that I realized I got to get out. I got to get out to speak freely.
Yeah. And only terms that the medical industrial complex will allow you to speak, using things. The H word, for example.
The H word? Sorry, you're breaking up again.
What happened? Here. We have entire platforms like the one that we're broadcasting on now, who are controlled by the medical mafia. And this is why we have certain words that we're not allowed to say, and why we have to call it the H word, for example, here, or on Twitter, or on Facebook, or any of the other, globalist controlled platforms, we're not even allowed to say these things. Like, really, what country are we in? I mean, this is completely unrecognizable to me. I know that you feel the same frustration, but it's difficult to do interviews like this and talk about that without actually saying what I really think, because I don't want to risk your platform either. So.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I do have my Rumble channel and my BitChute channel now.
We should do an interview on your Rumble channel. That's
we should. You know, you've gained great traction on Rumble. I saw your Rumble is, you know, doing its thing, which gives me hope, because if enough people can move over to Rumble,
yeah,
and we can just broadcast there, that'll be really important. But right now, all my audience is on YouTube, so
I get it.
I appreciate you playing ball on my YouTube.
Are there any comments or live questions that people have? Because I'm not able to see them, but I would be more than happy to do some of that with the allotted time that we have left here, if that's what you have in mind.
Yeah, they were talking in the comment section about how exactly he died. They thought it was maybe cancer in his heart. Is that correct?
We had heard cancer neurologically, so something in his brain is what the official diagnosis is so far, which obviously leaves us back to the same people who are diagnosing everything else that we're dealing with these days. So.
Sorry, what was that? You broke up.
I can't speak about the cause. I just know that is what they say is the cause. Yes, neurological brain cancer, I guess.
Okay, yeah, we're almost up with time, but I wanted to ask, what is next in Dr. Zelenko's legacy? It looks like he started a foundation knowing that he was going to die.
Yeah, he did. He knew, and you know, as we spoke towards the end of his life, you know, he knew that his time here was nearing an end. And so he felt that it was the thing to do to start a foundation, not only so that his legacy lived on, because Dr. Zelenko did not care about his personal legacy or his personal platform or fame or money. None of that. He was very generous. He was a very selfless person. So I want people to not take out of context this whole private jet thing either. And I feel the need to say that his acquiring of a personal jet was for the purposes of being able to spread his business and to spread his treatment, you know, at a more rapid pace, and have meetings about people to be promoting it and things like that, because he cared. And so, you know, I think that's important. But yeah, as I see us approaching the end of time here, I just want to say that, the foundation that Dr. Zelenko started, which you can find in my Telegram, there's a link to it, and I don't remember the exact link, so I'm sorry, I should have had that here. But that link is there, and
go to Stu Peters' Rumble, and you'll see. And Stu has a whole thing on the foundation, right?
Yeah, Rumble or my Telegram.
Okay. Yeah. Now I'm getting questions. Do you know how old his kid is, or his kids are?
A lot of kids, and they're all young. Dr. Zelenko was not old. Dr. Zelenko was just turned 48.
Yeah, and then they're asking about Dr. Artis, the snake venom guy.
Yeah. Dr. Zelenko supported the venom theory. He was not completed, you know, he had not completed what his whole analysis was, but he was very surprised by the findings, and also not surprised at the same time, and then was actually reviewing a whole bunch of peer-reviewed journals that specifically document peptides that have been found in relation to a lot of shots and different things with this particular pandemic. So go do the research. You'll find clearly what Dr. Zelenko said about it.
Well, there's also research out about various venoms actually being beneficial for treating even breast cancer.
Of course there is. They're telling you that anal sex is beneficial to a whole lot of things now too, right? So, I mean, come on. Once something is in the public purview, there has to be obviously a combative narrative to justify, you know, the means to get to the ends. And of course, we all know that snake venom, that poisonous venom, is not beneficial to anything. I mean, come on, you get bit by a snake, nothing great is going to happen. You're not going to inherit millions of dollars, and you're not going to have eternal life when you get bit by a king cobra. Bad things happen when you get bit by a venomous snake, period. That's what happens.
Wow. Yeah. Your documentary on that was fascinating. So
Thank you. Yeah, I thought it was too. And I, look, we just asked the questions. And as a result of just asking the questions, I was labeled an anti-Semite for that too, which
what?
is the weird. Yes. Watch the Water was anti-Semitic, believe it or not. I mean, these
Wait,
people
how?
nothing. They will stop at nothing to label you as a racist or an anti-Semite. And that's just, we all have to, we really have to, as logical, critical thinking people, we have to understand exactly what this is and be able really to laugh at that kind of stuff, because it's clearly insanity that we're up against. And we're watching a literal war being waged here between good and evil. You have to pick a side, and there's an obvious red line in the sand as to where that side is. And, just pick one or the other so that we can clearly identify who's on Team Stu and Team Patriot, and who's, obviously the enemy.
Well, I'm pro asking questions, so that's why I really liked your documentary, is because it causes us to think outside the box. And I think everyone needs to start thinking for themselves right now. And the biggest enemies are the people who shun you and persecute you for asking questions, which there's a huge problem with that in the media right now. Media members are terrified to ask certain questions. You should never have fear to ask questions as a journalist, but that's the case. That's the situation we're in right now, which is why the corporate media is in a fake narrative crisis right now.
Watch Fox right now. They throw these softball questions to the people who are responsible for the tank of this country. And they're afraid to even ask a question. Not even give an opinion, which I'm not afraid to give either, as you know. But just to ask the guy the question. This was the guy who was nestled up with Chinese communists, who also happened to be the chief of staff of the president. Should you ask him, what were you doing exactly with these Chinese communists? Has CCP infiltration really reached levels as high as the chief of staff to the president of the United States? Is that where we are? And so for that, I get blasted as, again, an anti-Semite, which I don't know how that has anything to do with that. But
you're pretty controversial, Stu. I didn't even realize.
I guess. Whatever. I'll own it.
You're covering some of the stuff nobody else is. I think you were the first one to cover the, those strange little particles that were in the needle liquid.
You don't want me to talk about that. We're on YouTube.
I know, right? I know. I'll have to have you as a guest on my Rumble.
Advertise it widely so that people can come over and hear all of the truth.
Yes, start moving over. I would love that. Okay, final question. I'm going to bring one more up. Will anyone be held accountable? Fauci, what's your take?
I can say with absolute certainty, 100% unequivocally, the people that are responsible for this current climate that we are seeing and all of these people that are dying will 100% be held accountable. And you know why I can say that? Because God wins. And ultimately, they will all stand before their maker, the creator, the Lord Almighty, the great I am. Jesus Christ. They will. Here on earth, we will see it happen. And I'm quite confident that we will see it happen right here, carried out. And the people that are responsible for any crimes against humanity will be held accountable. And we will watch as their sentences are handed down. And I think you'll be very pleased. I really do. I think you'll be very pleased.
We shall see. Time will tell. Thank you so much, Stu Peters, for weighing in on my YouTube here. Now, for those who want to, reach out to Dr. Zelenko's family or support in any way, do you know how people can do that?
The foundation is the best way to do that. And again, I'm incredibly sorry. I should know the exact URL. I don't off the top of my head. I'm just blanking on it. I just posted it not too long ago on my Telegram channel. So if you have Telegram, go there, t.me/Stu Peters. It's like my last post. It's there. And there's no grift here. I don't make any money off of this. So please just trust that. I'm not trying to grift off of anybody's death. I would never do that. But it's there. And I will also text it to you, Ivory, so that you can throw it up in the description here if you want to edit it later.
Yeah. Send me your Telegram link and I'll put it in my description.
Yeah, and I'll send you the link right to Zelenko's foundation as well, which
Okay,
I
perfect.
believe is being handled by Ann Vandersteel, who's another alternative media person. I don't think she any longer does media, and now she's kind of focused on more of this. So I will send that to you as well, and you can just put it all out there.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much again, Stu. All the best to you in your work that you're doing. And we'll
Thank
talk soon.
you. All right,
All
we'll
right.
talk. Good night.
Okay.